welcome to this Learning Network webinar. Darren's today going to take us through some really fantastic kind of tips and insights based on his experience in the industry, looking at how we cope with the kind of deluge of requests we often get working in L&D. We've all been there, right? Before we start that, though, just so you know, the live captioning functionality is turned on, and this session will be recorded and available in the members area of the Learning Network website within about 24 hours of this webinar ending. The only bit of sort of key news from the Learning Network at the start of this webinar is we'll be at World of Learning in October. Learning Design Live is organised. The speakers are all listed on the site, so please do come along. We're also holding a social at the World Bar on the end of day one of World of Learning, so please do book a ticket and come along and join us. We'll be providing some food at around, I think it's about 6 o'clock. So a nice way to end the day with a nice relaxing drink, a snack, and some chat with other L&D people. Finally, Connect, as you all know, is in November, and on the 9th of September, the early bird ticket sale will end. So please, please, please book your tickets before the price goes up. It's shaping up to be a fantastic day with wonderful keynotes, Steve Wheeler and Michelle Perry-Slater. We've also got some wonderful industry partners coming to do talks. We've got a reflection session at the end, a drinks reception. As you all know, lunch and snacks throughout the whole day are included. It's a wonderful day out in London where we can really focus on improving best practice, sharing ideas. We've also got 4 brilliant debates covering accessibility, sustainability, AI, and immersive technologies. So just a great day all round. That's it. That's everything from me. So I'm going to hand over to the person you're actually here to listen to, because you're probably bored of hearing from me already. Darren, I'm going to pop myself on mute, but I'll still be here. Over to you.
Brilliant. Cheers, Tom. Welcome, everyone, and to anyone watching on catch up afterwards. I'm just going to start with just a tiny little bit about myself, as egocentric as that may sound. I've basically realized I've been working in learning and development in different forms probably for half my life now, which is a terrifying thought. I originally started in group retail operations at what was at the time Dixon's Group, now is known as Currys PC World, that many people in the UK will know about. There I was in group retail operations doing the software testing and user acceptance testing for their new till system. Off the back of that, I then became a implementation coordinator and started rolling the system out to all the different branches, and along the way delivering a hell of a lot of training and early life support for any of the people using that platform. I then moved to a company that very few people had heard of. It's a company called Telindus. These guys were a surveillance solutions provider that would create some very, very complicated, high-end, very technical surveillance products. So I found myself in my early years working in Rotterdam Police Station, Leuven Police Station, installing all these funky equipment. I had to test it, I had to support it, and I had to teach people how to use it. So I started doing a lot of training. I did a lot of training for London Underground, who also use all this product as well. As they started to wrap up business, I moved over to Sony, spent 10 amazing years there where I headed up loads of different training initiatives, did a lot of product marketing, but also launched my first ever learning management system, which was called Knowledge Portal. This was to 22,000 users across 96 different countries worldwide. We had a huge amount of demand for the site, and basically taught people how to use and get the most out of the products. And then we also did all the content marketing as well. So we were producing thousands and thousands of images for social media and for the Sony website globally as well. Every asset that we had to create had about 130 different variances for different sizes, languages, etc. And I often joke whenever I introduce myself to people that I've literally covered everything, including how to castrate a dog. So the image you see there is at Medivet. And one of the pieces of content we had to produce was actually a series of 12 pieces of content around how you prep everything from intubating the animal, prepping it for kind of shaping its areas, and going through the entire operation recovery. We did an amazing realm of content from that, from how to use client systems, how to develop people's careers, and a whole host of things. With the Sony work, we did a lot of content marketing within that. And one of the fundamental principles that we worked to was content you were creating had a purpose. And that purpose was either to educate people, it's going to be how to use a product, how to learn a new skill that's going to help you use products or develop your career better or your own business better. It was to either inform people about what was happening in Sony, launching new products, firmware updates, events that were going on, or it was to inspire people. It could be those customer stories that really help people really connect with the product, understand them better, and really use them better. Across all of them was an entertainment factor. You had to make sure this content really connected with people, because you don't have an HR department or a management team forcing people to do your content. You've got to make sure that the content you're creating is going to have that level of engagement that people want to like it, share it, and complete it all the way through. Brought that into the world of Medivet. So in Medivet, we managed to select a platform and launch our learning management system within 50 days, drastically quicker than what I managed to do it with Sony. We managed to go live with 700 bits of content. And after about 2 years, we've managed to scale it up to be well in excess of 3,000. Through the two different companies, very, very different cultures, but at the same time, there is a real common goal that whether you're marketing to someone or doing a ton of learning and development content, it's behavior change, which is at the cause of what you're doing and why you're doing it. One of the things that we always focus on whenever I'm doing learning solutions, regardless of the size of the company, is we make sure that we've got a 33% focus on our platform, because you've got to make sure you're reducing barriers, making it easier for people to find information. You've got to make sure you've got amazing content. You've got to make sure it's really entertaining, really interesting, really connecting with the needs of your audience. And you've also got to make sure that you're communicating it. Miss out on one of those, don't invest enough time in one of those, and you're going to find that experience is nowhere near as positive as it needs to be. In today's talk, I'm going to go down two routes. I'm going to start with the stakeholder management and give you some little hacks around that. And then the second one is I'm going to look at the content production, and I'm going to find nice ways of being able to help you scale up your production and make it a lot slicker and easier to deal with. So starting with stakeholder management. The dilemma we've all had at some point is I want to help, but I don't have the capacity. How do I find a solution? Some people might go down the route of just pushing back and saying no. Some might just say yes and find ways of squeezing into the team, maybe actually causing some problems with the team because you're just overloading them with more content and you're unable to say no. I think there's a happy medium you can find. So what I would always start with, my top tip for this, is actually draw up right at the start what your business priorities are. Now, these might change from 1 month to the next in some businesses, but hopefully you've at least got them established well for a year. So agree these with the business. And in my case at Medivet, we were talking about building greater brand loyalty. We were talking about creating development opportunities, using L&D to attract new talent into the business because there's a massive recruitment scarcity at this moment in time. Teaching people how to sell products and services, helping them to standardize how they use business tools, a whole host of things. That these were what our priorities were. So anything that sits outside of that needs to have a slightly more special conversation with your stakeholders to say, well, it's not really what we do, but let's talk. Keep the talking going. Find out how urgent is it really? Do they really need it tomorrow, or can they wait a couple of weeks? Can they wait a couple of months? Are they telling you well in advance, or are they telling you literally a day before that something needs to go live? What happens if we don't do it? Is there a massive outcome from it? What is the outcome that you want? Who is the target audience? Does any content exist already? Is there budget if we need to outsource it? And actually, how big is this request anyway? Is it a full-blown training course or big program? Is it going to need lots of additional support? Are we going to need to do training needs assessments? Or is it a simple piece of content that just helps people understand something that can just fit into the flow of work? Sometimes we have a habit of overcomplicating the requests that are coming in, and we want to investigate further. Actually keep it simple. Find out really holistically what it is they need, what they need to achieve, and see how we can fit it in. Be honest with your stakeholders. Make sure they know your roadmap. Make sure they know the projects you're already working on. Make sure they're kind of really clear that you've already got projects lined up that need to be delivered alongside this. You might find, being open and honest with them, that actually, one, they say actually it's not as important as some of these things. We know that's probably not going to be the truth. No one's going to come to you and kind of want to downplay the importance of what they're doing. But what they might be able to do is help you with the management of the other stakeholders that you might have to disappoint. So be honest with it, show them where you are progressing with stuff, and show them what the important stuff is you're working on. Have that good open and honest conversation. Once you do start a project with any stakeholder, make sure you're keeping in constant contact with them. As the product, as the content you're creating is evolving, make sure you're keeping in touch. Don't find yourself in the position where you've done a huge amount of work, you've storyboarded it, you've designed it, you've started creating all the graphics for it, and without you knowing about it, something's changed in the business. That thing that was a really big high priority thing is no longer a thing anymore at all. Make sure you know about that. So my tip to you is have a nice simple process that shows you all the different steps of your production. And at each stage, as you're moving from one to another, update your stakeholder. Gives them an opportunity to say, oh no, something's changed. Sorry, you can back off that. Sorry, I haven't told you about it. That just really helps with it. But capture those requirements, make sure it's designed, storyboard, get it signed off by your stakeholder as well. That will reduce the number of iterations you need on the final product. And the quicker you can get through this stage, the smoother you can get through it, will all depend on the relationship and the communication you've got with your stakeholder. Work with simple templates. So I've always built these both at Sony and Medivet, regardless of the type of content we're creating. So make sure you've got a really nice requirements capturing template that all your team uses religiously on every single project. You may have digital versions of this. You might use Jira or something like that as an online tool, but actually have something you can scribble down ideas on and just sketch things out. So have some sort of storyboard that you can use, regardless of whether you're working with video or Articulate, various other different authoring tools. It's a nice way of getting your ideas down. Stakeholders sometimes struggle to picture a storyboard coming to life. They sometimes get hung up on lots of details. So where necessary, use things like Balsamiq, help wireframe some of the look and feel of what it is you're looking for, and then maybe do some graphical mock-ups. You can usually do these pretty quickly, and they'll save you a lot of time when it comes to actually the finished product, that you've already got an idea with your stakeholder as to what they're expecting. Managing your stakeholders can often be very, very difficult. Sometimes you get absolutely amazing ones that are at the end of the phone or at the end of a Teams message whenever you need them. Other times they want to just push the work onto you and then they'll carry on with other stuff and they won't check back with you regularly. So you need to find how you're going to best work with them. If they're difficult to get time with in advance, set yourself a time as to when content's going to be ready for review. Get that meeting request in the diary with all the different stakeholders that need to review and sign off, and get that together. If they're quite happy just to work through it by themselves, look at certain tools. One of the tools we use was something called CI Media Cloud. It's a Sony product. It means that we can upload video or even graphics to it, and we can really quickly go through and just mark up in line with the timeline where certain things need to be changed. So if we need to turn up the brightness, change the text on there, whatever it is, all of your different reviewers are able to go in and put those comments. This will really help you reduce the number of iterations of content reviews because everyone's putting their content in, everyone can see everyone's comments. You're not having to fish around in lots of different emails and piece stuff together. You're not having to have conflicts over this person wants this and this person wants that. Who is the person I have to choose from? So this is a really useful product to get in place. Onto the content production stuff. So biggest advice, first of all, get to know your learners more than anything else. I always push learner-centric design, and this is the same if you're doing marketing, if you're doing L&D. Really understand what your learners are looking for. What generations you work with more than anything else. So, find out, are they the boomers, the Xers, the millennials, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas? They will all have different expectations of how content needs to be displayed to them and how they're going to consume it. What device are they going to be using and where are they going to be learning? Do they have a good learning culture within the organization where they can just carve out time through the course of the day or month or week to actually sit down and do some learning? Does the business and their management team really value them spending some time doing that? So as you go through this, kind of really understand your learners, and getting some surveys out and regularly surveying them will help you build your content strategy to really create content. But the pace and scale is often the problem. If you're running content teams, or if you're running a whole L&D department, how do you actually meet the needs of the business? So first of all, think best about how people learn. So I always like to break it down that people have got three key ways that they like to learn. So they're either trying to learn a specific task to just be able to do something now in the moment of work. So it could be they've got the till system they need to learn how to use. They've just got to remember how to do a refund, for instance. It could be that they're starting their career with you. They're brand new into the organization. They're like a dry sponge looking to absorb as much knowledge at that point. So make sure it's really easy to go from the onboarding and just generate curiosity and learning more about the business. But also people are really desperate to progress their careers. And when they're ready to do that, then again, they'll be looking for more content. So these are the different pathways of learning that you want to be focusing on the most. One of the things I would say is define your principles, how content is created up front. This is really important. So are you going to be an organization where you want people to learn anytime, anywhere, on any device? Are you going to be digital first, predominantly looking at video through this? Are you looking at short bursts of content or much longer form content? Are you going to be doing a mixture of content, including HTML articles or PDFs? Are you going to be really laser focused on task specific stuff? Or are you going to be, again, doing larger training courses? What's the barriers to learning that you're going to put in, that you're going to remove, and how you're going to make it really slick? And in my case, it was always about reducing the amount of PowerPoint, SCORM, and quiz and assessments that's used. Where we would use assessments would be something on skills assessment to see actually how much do people know already up front, and then get them to focus on just the bits they don't know, rather than arbitrarily just forcing them to do a whole series of content that they already know. This was really important in Medivet when we had people like head vet nurses coming into place that have been in the industry for years. There was so much knowledge that we would never be able to teach them everything they already knew. But what we did want to know is what they didn't know to help plug the gaps and direct them to where we needed to be. One thing I'd always suggest doing is creating your brand guidelines. And this is really useful, especially as you start scaling your team. Really important when you start working with external content creators. You want to make sure everything looks consistent, looks on brand, has the same look and feel and tone of voice. It also reduces a lot of arguments with your stakeholders. So where you're working with people that want to argue over, I think the color of this button should be blue, and really it should be gray because that's what the brand guideline says, it really helps you frame those conversations a little bit more productively. And again, reduces the number of iterations and extra negative feedback you're going to get when you just want to plow through stuff. Again, keep it simple. There's probably a lot of content out there already. Work out what you're adding value to and producing yourself. Look at what you can purchase, and look at what you can partnership with as well. So when it comes to searching for content, most organizations, big or small, will have some form of SharePoint or intranet. These are dumping grounds for thousands of pieces of content that actually it's worth you just hunting through, seeing what's there. You could be really surprised at how much great learning content is already available within this. Obviously, if anything you find that looks good, check with the business owner, make sure it's valid, make sure we've got a license to still use it, make sure it's able to be used. If it is, put it on your LMS, tag it up well, put a good description on it. Otherwise, archive it, get it away from people so they're not getting confused that that's still stuff they need to be doing. Other teams might be really, really useful as well. So you might find you've got a really great marketing department, PR, internal comms, recruitment, even product managers if you're building products yourself. All of these could have amazing amounts of content that, again, you can just repurpose or even just publish as is and get them onto your learning management system. So hunt out what you can to start with. One thing we've done in the past, again, using CI Media Cloud from Sony, in the past, we've actually built these asset libraries. Find out if your organization has one. If you don't, it's worth getting one. Then you can really start collaborating and sharing resources between a whole host of departments within your company. With this, we managed to put all of our stock video, we managed to put all our stock assets, audio, everything like that is in there. And when it comes to just doing any video production, we know we can go back to this and have an entire library of really great quality content that's been signed off. So when it comes to in-house production, think where you're going to add the most value. So anything that's about your brand and company values, you're probably going to tell that story better than anyone externally. Anything specific to the career development pathways that's going to grow people's careers, well, you've got people in-house which have probably already grown their careers, so leverage those people, help them tell the story that you need them to tell. Tutorials around bespoke systems. No one else is going to know that better than you. Use your expertise in-house to deliver that. The sales training, again, you'll know your products and services better than anyone else, and also training to enhance operational efficiency. You will know the problems you've got in-house. So these are the areas where you should focus your own in-house teams to create content. Some examples of that content is where we've got, again, this is Medivet, so we've got some amazing stuff around career development. So this is a nice piece of camera where people have come in as vets and they've developed all the way up to regional directors, and they talk about their story of how they've done that and where they've studied. We've got stuff on business systems and processes, and we've got stuff on how to sell services. Again, all built in-house, all using video predominantly, but there's always some additional PDFs, some additional handouts. SCORM, I know there's going to be people watching this video that are still working with SCORM content. They're still using Articulate or Captivate, maybe if you're on the Adobe suite. There's loads of kind of pros and cons to using this. I think be wary of this. It's content which I think is starting to run out of steam a little bit, where it takes a hell of a long time to actually create some of this content as well. But also, as you're looking at some of the younger generations, kind of millennials onwards, anyone born 81 and onwards, are probably unlikely to connect with this constant clicking through content to get to where they want. This branching where you've got to explore so much and click on a million things to unlock information they need. They want to consume small bite-sized videos that they can just scroll through, see the content they want, and they will rapidly plow their way through content if you create in a format. So I would always advocate a lot more video content over SCORM, but obviously SCORM will still have its place within your organization, I'm sure. Video stuff is actually a lot quicker and easier to build. The tools for this are getting easier all the time. Sometimes piece to camera shots are probably some of the easiest stuff you can do. My advice would be to use 2 cameras. That gives you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the edit. So if you do need to just nibble away at something because you want to trim something down, then you can do that quite easily. So we've got content there that's been done with Adobe Premiere. We've got some infographic-y, kind of story-based and infographic-based stuff, which is done in After Effects. We've got some 3D renders that have been done in Blender, and something that probably most people are familiar with is Camtasia for your screen recording. All short bite-sized pieces of content, all helping to tell the story in line with either work or some sort of career development path that we've got. If you don't have the camera equipment, if you don't have the ability to bring everyone together, a quick hack that you can use is something called Restream. It's a really, really good product that you can use the live production tools to bring subject matter experts from all over the world. I can see Alex is on the call that we've got going live at the moment. There's content that we've put together ourselves where we've had people in South Africa that are doing dental kind of knowledge sharing and talking us through a whole load of different medical procedures that they can do. We'd never be able to fly that person over to do that, but we've been able to have a couple of different vets having live conversations all at the same time. We can put up lower thirds and caption stuff and put in people's name and details, encourage people to ask questions during those streams. And during that time, we're recording it. So all we need to do at the end of that live recording is just export it and we can put it straight to the LMS, usually with no editing needed. We just sometimes need to compress it a little bit depending on the LMS requirements. So this is a really good tool that you can benefit from. It is not that expensive. When it comes to content from external providers, this is something I really kind of encourage you to look outwards to see what you can get. Sometimes you have to pay for it, sometimes you don't. There's just kind of those relationships that you can really maximize the amount of content without actually not doing much effort. So look at the company non-specific stuff. So compliance training, this is something which you can easily pick up. You don't need to build your own fire safety training. You can buy that in quite easily, save yourself a ton of time. Regulatory content, radiation laser training, again, you can typically buy that stuff in, but some partnerships might help you get that a little bit cheaper. So for instance, we have looked at working with different people to film content in the past. And as we've filmed it, we've not charged them for filming it and they've not charged for their time and being on camera. We then give them the content and they give us the content and the rights to use it. So you can make these partnerships work really nicely. Soft skills training, technical skills like kind of off-the-shelf packages like Office, Teams, Zoom. Again, you can get all this content pretty easily. Team and Zoom stuff you can get for free. Office, again, you can buy this content really easily. And they will be able to keep it up to date for you as well, which is the other key thing with a lot of these cloud-based services now. Again, anything on kind of equipment you might have in your business, how to use it, clean it, maintain it. Again, you can often get that from the actual manufacturers as well without any cost. There are costs, of course, training providers that you can buy content from. So most of you would have heard of things like LinkedIn, GetAbstract. There's loads of people on the Litmus again. All of these have been at Learning Technologies at times. You're now starting to see a lot of LMSs integrating directly with these. And there is a bit of a warning with this. Don't try pulling every bit of content through. Your learners will get very overwhelmed if suddenly you log in one day and there's 2,100 bits of content all just sprung up and it looks like they've got to try completing all of it. Carefully create the stuff that's going to be there, but also encourage people to have conversations with their managers around what's the skills they need and then use that content repository wisely off the back of it. Manage people's expectations. Go1 is a really good content aggregator. They pull in content from a lot of different training companies under one simple subscription. You've got extra companies like Thrive has got their own content club. We've got Powered by Stories, which is a new agency setting up to help produce really nice interactive video learning. I've seen some stuff from Radisson that they've done in the past. But one I really like is a company called In Rehearsal, and these are a really nice company that are building massive libraries of content that really help people cover everything from project management to mental health and well-being to assertiveness to communication skills. There's lots of really great stuff there. Again, really cost-effective solution, really high quality. Everything's broken down into small chapters and they give you a lot of extra resources along the way for that. So definitely someone I would reach out and have a look at as well. When I look at partnerships, when I look at external kind of support I need, it's normally one of two reasons I'm looking for it. One, I either need specific subject matter expertise, or I may be looking for specific support on just, I've got too much content being built internally at the moment and I need that burst capacity support. So some partnerships, again, if you've got some mental health awareness programs that you need to be working on, really good company to work with is 87%. We partnered with these in helping them tell the story, and they had the educational and the clinical psychologists to be able to help cover everything from suicide awareness to all the different mental health elements of burnout and frustrations and all the types of stuff that people are dealing with. We built about 9 hours worth of video content to support this program and had lots of downloadable PDF assets as well that people could use. Central CPD was a great example of partnerships where, again, we provided all of the expertise, all of the vets, all of the facilities. We even got the dogs in from dogs' homes that were needing to be, in this case, castrated or pitch spayed. We did all of the clinical stuff. They did all the recording and the editing. They now sell that content on to their customers, and Medivet has that content in perpetuity that they can just use as long as they want. So that's a really nice partnership that cost none of us anything, and they've got a business proposition off the back of it. But also I've worked with some really great film videographers as well. So Fixius Films is a company I would recommend. If you're going to do anything really glossy, anything brand awareness, these guys are really, really good at creating content. They've done me some great customer stories and stock footage over the years. Another great partnership where actually the effort on my part was pretty low. We just had to make friends with Hills Pet Foods. They had loads of great training content already, and all I had to do was encourage them to give me that content to host on my own LMS. And in doing so, they then produced some nice little posters to advertise it. They produced socks, weirdly enough, teas and chocolates, a load of really good things that we could then send out en masse to all of the practices to really start advertising this content. And again, they get a nice little treat. We get loads of content. They get loads of people understanding their products a lot better and being able to advise on the right way of using them. So I know time is running out, so I'm going to move straight on to my top tips for rapid content production. What a mouthful. Within this, first of all, build the right content. I think if you've always built stuff in one format, or if in the other way, you're mastering thousands of different authoring tools and sometimes you're struggling to pick which one to use for this project, first of all, think about the learner. How are they going to consume the content? How complex is the topic? what format would work best to tell that story, and what's your time and budget. My favorite is always video. I think you can't go wrong with video. Nowadays, you can subtitle it really easy in a lot of learning management systems. You can get scripts. It's very easy to regionalize it if you suddenly need to create content for outside of the UK. PDFs are also really, really quick and easy to build, as with HTML articles. Audio, good for some topics, especially if people want to just listen while they're on the go. And then where necessary, you've got quizzes, assessments, and SCORM content. But I would put those towards the bottom of my design kind of options. Look at what skills your team have got. I think this is probably where a lot of L&D departments go a little bit wrong, is they spend so much time focusing on the training and development of all of the people in the organization, but actually sometimes they forget about themselves. So sometimes you want to invest a little bit of time in looking at the storytelling and the copywriting. Sometimes you want to make sure that people have got those videography and audio producing skills. Sometimes they just need to do a little bit more on the graphic design side of things. Get the skills right first, and then start looking at what's the best tools to be able to enhance those skills and bring those skills to life. So I'd always look at the impact of your content and the engagement over the toolbox and what you've got out there. Focus on the story. Historically, we've always learned from stories. So keep your stories nice and concise, but bring them to life. We're now beyond the YouTube generation. We're now into the TikTok generations, and attention span is dropping constantly. That doesn't mean you can't connect with people with good stories, and that doesn't mean you can't produce really, really good binge-worthy stories to tell. We found years ago when I was working at Sony, if we produced a 1 hour bit of content, nobody would ever get through it. But if we created lots of 5 to 6 minute pieces of content, people would get through 4 or 5 of those in a session quite easily. So milk that. People like the feel of progression. So, again, video works really nicely in this, but you can still apply the same principle to SCORM. I found that people learn best from people. And we found within Medivet, there was lots of really great advocates that we had that we could just turn into a star. Piece to camera videos are the easiest and quickest to make. Again, get an extra camera in there so you've got a couple of shots that you can make the edit easy. But people really valued and really engaged highest with content that they recognized the people in, or they were thought leaders. Anything to enhance the kind of feeling of value in that content. And one thing to measure is the succession from episode 1 to the last episode in your series. That's a good sign of strong engagement, not how many times people have clicked on it or how long people have spent on it. If they're progressing through all the content, that's your best strong engagement figure to go with. No L&D talk, I think, these days would be complete without mentioning something about AI. I do reference a chap in this, which is Ross Stevenson, who looks after Steal These Thoughts. I think he's one of the speakers that's engaged with the network. He's got some amazing video content and an amazing article he's written. If you don't go into that much detail, and if you're not that keen on getting involved with AI at the moment, the areas where I would suggest you looking at is it's a good starting point. If you want to just get something summarized and understood, put in a couple of questions. The example I've got there is describe 7 habits for me. It does me a nice little blurb. When I ask it to summarize the actual 7 habits themselves, it gives me some really great, concise bullet points that I can start using, and I can get my content off to a good start. The second one that I would use this for is for all of the amazing content creators I've worked with over the years. One of the things they seem to hate doing is tagging the content and putting a good description on it when they publish it to the LMS. So one of the things I would do, export the script of what it is you've created, bang it straight into ChatGPT or GPT. There are 2 versions out there, weirdly enough. Bang it into that and say, summarize this for me in 100 words, and let it do the heavy lifting for you. And it would be amazing how quick it can just do a really nice summary that you can just put straight onto your LMS with the content, and take away that kind of annoyance and frustration that the LMS manager is always pushing. Give me better descriptions and tagging. The other one is keep reflecting. I put this one in specifically because actually many of your content creators within L&D are the unsung heroes. They're often pushing through lots of demanding content requests. They don't always feel the most loved, respected, or valued. So do keep reflecting and celebrate the performance of your team. Try to measure the impact rather than just the engagement. The reason why I say that is you could be working in a retail environment where you've got 20 people in a branch. only one of those probably needs to complete some of the content you're creating. And they will then often take that knowledge and then distribute it through everyone else. So if that branch is suddenly selling that product or performing in the way you need to perform it, that's good enough. You don't need to have 100% completion across the company of doing your content. So help your team understand that so they don't lose the motivation when they look at their stats and think, oh, only 12 people have done it. Those 12 people might be the most influential people in their branches that's going to have a much bigger impact. When it comes to looking at content, follow what other content creators are doing. Stay fresh. Make sure you're always looking at new stuff. As you get into a bit of a rhythm of producing content and seeing how others are doing it, the speed at which you can produce content starts going up. So really worthwhile you following other key content creators out there and seeing how you can simplify what you're doing. And finally, my top takeaways, well within time, which I was worried about earlier on this morning. First of all, be flexible with your stakeholders. Try and foster that two-way partnership. Don't be necessarily too subservient. You've got to say yes or you've got to say no. Try and find a way of making it work and look for those collaborations. Don't over-engineer it. We see this all the time. You perhaps don't need to do a full training needs analysis on every content request. Sometimes it's just as simple as I need my learners to be able to understand how to do this. This is a process change that's happening in 2 weeks' time. Streamline your design, documentation, review process. The easier you make that, the more likely your team are to use it, and the more likely you're going to get the good sign-offs that you need from your subject matter experts, and the less iterations you're going to need at the end of it. So the better you can streamline that process, the better it will be for you. Keep focus on learner-centric design. Good storytelling, good content creation that's going to fit with what they're needing. You'll be able to create content a lot quicker and get a lot more satisfaction out of that content and see the impact if you're focusing on what the learners need. As I said, pick the most effective and efficient means of delivering that content, but measure the impact and celebrate your success. That's really important to keep your team really motivated. That's all for me. If you want to connect with me, there's a QR code on there that will take you to my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to just scan that on your phone and connect. But now we can answer some questions if you'd like.
Fantastic. Well, it was absolutely tons to take away from there. One thing that did come up, as I said, we will make the recording available. Are we able to make the slide deck available?
Yeah, I think there's probably just a few little tweaks I've got to make to it as I've gone through. But yeah, I can make a PDF of this available. I don't know where you distribute it to, but yeah. For sure.
Fantastic. Well, once that's live, obviously, well, I would suggest connecting on LinkedIn. Is always the best way to help build everyone's network. That's what we're all about here at the Learning Network. The clue's in the name. But we'll also make the slide deck once ready as a PDF available with the recording. We have, however, got a question in. So from John, any recommendations on content creators to follow?
I think it's all depending on what you like. There's thousands. TikTok's becoming a really good place for just people that are creating some of the craziest bits of content. Follow what you need, but to be honest, for me, I would always start with a task I'm trying to do. So when I was so during lockdown, we dropped down to 4-day weeks, and I decided to start teaching myself After Effects. I started doing lots of online quizzes. Pretty hard tool to get into. It's probably the hardest one out of all of them to get yourself going with. So all you start doing is just typing into YouTube, how do I do this in After Effects? And very quickly you'll start seeing very consistent content creators that are doing all sorts of tutorials from that. So start with that, but then kind of YouTube does what it does and starts suggesting other content creators and other things you might like. So build up from there. And yeah, just start with the task you need to do and go from there.
And that's it. I think it's interesting because one thing I did with that exact thing is when I started using LinkedIn, YouTube a lot for work-related things, I actually created a new account and just used that for just work stuff. And it's incredible how quickly that algorithm picks up on what that account is looking at if it is specific, and just absolutely snows you under with great content from people. So no, I think that's phenomenal advice. Something I guess that something that's maybe a question I've got is a lot of what you were talking about is quite interdisciplinary inherently. It relies on kind of the connections that we have within our business. whether it's with our SMEs, other departments, senior leadership. Yet for a long time, I think certainly I've observed it, L&D teams kind of get walled off as either by the business, hey, go and make things happen, or internally we adopt the mindset of, hey, we're the learning experts, so we know the way forwards, we're right. Not saying everyone else is wrong, but that is sometimes what's said. How do we find the right balance in being the experts, being respected as the experts, but also building those bridges so that when we need help from an SME or when we want to pull on a marketing resource, that's not an ask from nowhere?
Yeah, so I think I would always aim to be, rather than classed as the expert, I'd be more the consultant. So I would take the kind of aim to, so when I first went into Medivet, for instance, I set up time with all of the department heads and as many of their team as they would give me access to at the same time. So one, I'm getting to know them. It's a nice little onboarding exercise, but I'm looking to see what are the problems in their part of the organization. What are the challenges they've got? So I'm looking at not trying to create a solution at that moment in time, but I'm definitely trying to understand how I can best be the consultant to them to start suggesting what we focus on. And during that time, you're going to get a million content requests, and you've got to manage expectations of, look, this is just for me to understand what's going on, and we can start working through where the big projects are, where the quick gains are, and all this type of stuff. So I think getting in as quickly as possible and being that kind of friendly face, that consultative approach, help me understand your business and build those relationships as early as you can. For me, it was easier because I was coming in without there being a digital learning team and without there being much learning development beforehand. So this kind of coming on and almost getting to know the business was something they were quite happy to do because we were a new function. They wanted to know about me as much as I wanted to know about them. Yeah. But yeah, just get those conversations going as quickly as possible, build the best relationships you can across the teams, and start foraging where you're helping them out as much as they're helping you out. And I think as soon as you start establishing some of those win-wins, that's where you start getting some good stuff. You know, I've had experiences where you work with marketing department and their first mindset is how you create everything in the way they want you to do. And eventually over time, you can kind of chip away at that. You can start producing content in a way that actually is more innovative than perhaps they had thought of in the past, while still keeping on brand. And actually just by demonstrating some cool stuff that you can start breaking down some of those barriers that you have as well. So lots of prototyping, lots of examples, lots of helping to understand their world a lot better. I think it's a lot easier if you're talking about them than it is about you talking about you. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker you're going to break those barriers down.
Fantastic.
Well, actually, one other thing very quickly on that is, you can then start expanding other areas as well. So I managed within Medivet to expand out not just from the training content we were creating, but I also started to manage to bring in internal comms as well. And that starts bringing in that content strategy I talked about up front, where you want to educate people, but you want to inform. And in doing that, we became a lot more central to the operations team, that we started getting told about what was happening, business changes well in advance, as opposed to being at the tail end of it. So as soon as you start kind of bringing in other key departments that perhaps wouldn't think of training as a tool that they would need, that they want kind of a communications tool, it's the same skills for your content team. Bring all of that into one big team, and then you've got regular content going out, and it makes a destination hub for your LMS as well. So lots of win-wins along that side of things.
I love that. I think that's really, really great advice. Making that LMS a destination people want to go to is no small job, but it's one that needs doing, right? Fantastic. That we've got no questions currently in the Q&A. So to wrap us up, I guess I'd really just like to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and share these tips with us. I think there was a good number of things in there for absolutely everyone to take away. I know I'm going away with some things to think about. I know we've said it a few times, but just to wrap up at the end, recording will be available in about 24 hours time. We'll endeavour to make the PDF of the slides available soon after that as well. If you are not currently a member of the network, please consider joining if you joined us today. It's a fantastic group of people who are just there to trying to help each other out, share best practice, running sessions like this, running face-to-face sessions, running a conference in November, really just doing whatever we can to support L&D professionals in raising the bar of what we do, because let's face it, what we do inside businesses is really important. So thank you, Darren. Thank you, everyone who's attended. Have an amazing rest of the day, and we shall see you in the next one.